Long quest on the highway we call life. Every day is a gamble, time to roll the dice. I want the whole pie, motherfucker slice. On my back a few times, I done pulled the knife. Live right, the karma always come back around.
Yeah.
All right. We're joined back by our guest today, joining us all the way from France. Artist, producer, Naud. What's good, friend?
Yeah, doing great. Very happy to be here and happy to talk with people from the other side of the pool.
Yeah, yeah. Ironically, like I had your manager Laurie on a while back, so I know how sometimes. Shout out to Laurie, by the way, but
Yeah, by the
I
way,
know
strange that.
how that time difference can be between us and you across the world. So I appreciate taking the time to join me as well.
It's fine. You're East Coast based or
I'm in Dallas, Texas. I'm in the
okay.
South. Yeah.
Still better than California. You know, the time gap could
Yeah.
have been bigger, so it's fine.
So, tell us a little bit about how long have you been creating music and like what was kind of your moment as far as deciding you wanted to pursue this on a larger
Yeah.
level?
Well, big question. I'll try to be concise, but if I drag for too long, just like cut me off. But I've been writing songs, as long as I can remember. When I was probably 8 or 10, I was already, just writing little poems and just like little text that I wanted to capture. And I had the classical double failure standard. I started with the classical piano. I failed and dropped out. Then same with classical guitar. And I just realized that, I wanted to learn music in my own way. And I just started everything from scratch once again with the guitar,
Okay.
the bass, and I just learned by ear, picking up Jamiroquai bass lines and
Yeah.
bass lines from artists I really loved. Everything that was funky and groovy was perfect for me. And then, one instrument bringing another, I jumped to the guitar, then to the piano. But the thing that has stuck with me for a very long time were the vocals, because I've been singing since I'm, like 3 years old. And funnily enough, I started with the singing in English. So even though I have still a little bit of accent left over, I just started singing in English. And then, kind of paradoxically, I switched to French. And then, it was just learning from all the people that I had around me. I'm not from a musician family, but, I started learning how to produce, how to butcher, drafts of songs for years. That's how it works. And then to answer the final part of your question, I just when I was a student, I had a first project that was basically, the draft for No. The songs were the same songs. It's just that, I didn't know what I was doing, just trying to play gigs, just trying to do videos, learn the whole game, promote myself. So I just crashed with that first project, but I learned a lot, and then I started everything. Was like, okay, now that I know how to do it, I'm gonna start over with No. I have the song. I'm just gonna have a new, new identity, something
Yeah.
fresh and a bit more, professional. And here I am. It's been 5 years, or no, 4 years to be honest, and it's just great. It's just great.
Yeah, yeah, I totally, hear you and a lot of what you said. First and foremost, as far as like your sound, it was amazing when you said Jamiroquai, like something just clicked for me because listening to a lot of your music, I kind of got that funky, like
Yeah,
jazzy vibe from a
of
lot of your
course.
music. And then, I mean, we had a similar path from a standpoint. Now, I never played the classical piano, but
Uh-huh.
I'm a brass player, and I spent a lot of
Mm.
my time, like in middle school and high school, in the band and learning different brass instruments and basically taking what I've learned from that and applying it to becoming a music producer and an artist. And here we are, in 2025, and it just they kind of pushed me in that direction of wanting to become a music creator. And then whenever like a lot of the music gear and programs and applications and the
Mm-hmm.
ability to have a studio at home became accessible, that's when I kind of invested and wanted to
Mm-hmm.
kind of go all in on it as well. And yeah, now it's been 5 years for you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
5 years. It's hard to, like, of course, the project officially was born during COVID, I think the end
Yeah.
of 2020. But as I said, it's a bit blurry because it's taking legacy, stuff, songs and techniques from what I was doing before. So yeah, officially it's 4 years, but behind the scenes it's more like I don't want to say maybe 10, something like that, but let's say 4 years because I know that it's 6 year to have like a younger project, something
Yeah.
fresh. So let's say four.
Well, you have a lot of music out though for, 5 years. Because I was
Hmm.
just looking down at your
Yeah,
catalog, and yeah, you have a whole lot of music out. So, big recognition to you for that, and
yeah, thank
just your
you.
work ethic. Now, no problem. Now, you produce a lot of your music, as you
Hmm.
were saying. Okay, what do you use for like music production and recording in terms of gear and software?
Yeah, it's funny because you were talking about the shift, towards digital music production, and how it enabled you to produce more. And for me, I grew up with that. So I started producing on a little computer with like a not so legal version of Cubase. But that of course was back then. Now I've bought everything. But yeah, it was just starting to produce with Cubase, and then I was doing, like gardening work for my neighbors, and I just saved up like a bit of money to buy myself a used MacBook. And then, I just transitioned to what was it? GarageBand,
Yeah.
GarageBand and Logic. And then I've settled, I think it's been I made the switch like 5 or 6 years ago to I'm now using Ableton because I just love it because well, it's in the name, for live purposes when I don't have my band, I can rearrange stuff. And I really like that DAW. It's like really the centerpiece of my recording process because it really is like an instrument when you have all the algorithm, all the Max for Live devices, all these little additions that you have around the software itself that I love it a lot. And then to be honest, I'm not really a big hardware user. I don't have like a collection of synthesizers, even though I love that. I've worked for Arturia. Now I work also on the side for another
That's awesome.
synthesizer company. So I just love gear and I know a lot about synthesizers. But when it comes to my stuff, as you said, like my catalog is a bit big, like for someone that has been only here for 5 or 6, no, like
Yeah.
4 or 5 years. It's just that I like stuff to be snappy. I like improvising, on the structures of songs, on how I treat samples. I never have like templates or set processes, but for the gear that I have, I want to have stuff that I know like the back of my hand and that I can, twist, use. Uh, so yeah, I would say I have like a Stratocaster that I've bought in the US that's totally customized, like with weird, routing, like weird pickup settings. Same for my bass. I've had like the same stuff for basically 10 years. I have a Nord stage that I love because it's a beast. Like it's very efficient when you want to produce with it. So, just I'm not I'm when I'm recording for my vocals, I go to studios, so I don't have that many microphones either. So,
Yeah.
it's a lot of in the box stuff. I do a lot of post production. Like when you hear my song, my songs are just like, oh, it sounds like maybe a vocal, but there is something behind it. So I do a lot of post productions. But when it comes to pre-production and to production, it's fairly simple, like a few VSTs, a few instruments, and yeah, that's it. Oh, just one last thing. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, I would say that first, the synth part, I do have something that is a bit standing out. It's the synthesizer for the company I work for. It's called the Osmos, and it's very funny because you can go and do like vibratos. You can
Okay.
play with a lot of different articulations that normally are more like you said that you were a brass player, that are more for people that come from different instrument backgrounds, but you don't necessarily have that many articulations when you're playing the keys, So it's very funny because now I have that synthesizer that can really blend with my voices because you can have vibratos, different levels of attack, and all that stuff. So I would say that has become very quickly also a centerpiece of my process, and I'm not doing that to do like fake advertising for the
Oh
company. I just love
yeah.
that synth.
Yeah. I definitely, you said it's Osmos?
Yeah, the osmos, it's
Okay.
the French for osmosis. It's very
Okay.
simple to translate. And it's a great piece of synthesizer, because with one preset, it's more like one preset equals one instrument because you have all the articulation. So it's very cool to have something that sounds modern, but that behave like, like a trumpet or like a voice, like that. It's very organic, and I love it for that.
Is it kind of like that MPE MIDI polyphonic expression? Okay, yeah, I'm with you.
You nail it.
I'm
All
with
like that.
you.
It's yeah, you have a few years back then you had the Seaboard by Roland
Yeah.
that make
Yeah.
made a big splash, and that was the introduction
Well,
for a lot of people to that technology. And now it's great because you have all these brands, all around that are adopting. Yes, that's the MIDI one. Yeah, yeah. I had it back then, and it was a great introduction to MP. And so the idea with the Osmos is that you have the same principle, but you have the how to say that, like the feel of a real keyboard, and you have also like a sound engine. So it's cool to have the best of both worlds, and I love it for that.
yeah, those instruments, like MPE instruments are just amazing, and the way that
Cool.
you can kind of express yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
I use that Seaboard basically on iPad and Mac for like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
music production, and I'm always interested in finding more MPE related synthesizers, just for that one reason for creating.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, also, what I wanted to say about like just your path as far as programs or apps that you use to make music, mentioning GarageBand and
Yeah.
Logic, for myself and kind of something on the side, well, not necessarily on the side, but I guess what I do with music is I kind of train people on using GarageBand
Mm-hmm.
and that type of thing. And um, a lot of the people that come to me, there was one individual who I showed how to use GarageBand, and he
Mm-hmm.
ended up coming back later down the line. He made several different albums using GarageBand. So
Yeah.
I always like to say for like new up and coming music creators, don't sleep on GarageBand, being that is a free
Mm-hmm.
product. And then I mean, you mentioned you bought a used MacBook to start off with. We kind of
Yeah.
went the same route with that as well. Like I remember I bought my first iMac, might have been 15 years ago or so, but like that was kind of what I did. I got into Logic and started also making beats in Machine. I never got around to
Mm-hmm.
using Ableton, but I got a lot of friends that also use Ableton and
Yeah.
they love it. So it's definitely something I'd like to try down the line. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like me personally, I remember that one time I used to want to buy every synthesizer I saw somebody using on the internet, every
Mm.
VST, and it got to a point where I just wanted a more simple setup to where
Yeah,
if I have a limited time, 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever the case may be, I can get in and start creating real quick. And
of course.
yeah, that's kind of how my workflow has changed over years. So sometimes less is more, it can
Mm-hmm.
help you in a lot of ways.
Definitely agreed with that. And I think I also love, even though I don't do it yet on my records, but I love folk music for its immediacy. Just have one person with a guitar sitting there and it works. It's powerful. So I like really that's, even though it's not necessarily the case in my arrangements, but I like that stripped down approach. If you have like fewer tools that can work, you can do a lot. And your GarageBand example was perfect. You have some people buying stuff like crazy, even though you don't necessarily need that, because if you spend time learning stuff and like buying, choosing, thinking about what you're going to buy, you're not making music. So of course it's also very nice to spend time learning the tools and creating your own sound, but we have too many tools, I think
Yeah,
available today. And I was taking the example of folk musicians because look at how many iconic songs and powerful songs have been just written with like a piano and a voice, or just even just a piano, like classical composers before that, before folk music as well. So I like also that way of just limiting yourself so you can produce more and spend more time refining, the emotion, how you want to phrase thing, the meaning of your songs, and all of that. But all approaches are valid. I'm not
Yeah, yeah.
giving any lessons.
I mean, like I had a old mentor of mine that used to tell me is just because you have all the gear in the world, all the plugins, doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna make the best music out there. So,
Hmm.
you know, take that
Yeah,
for what it's worth. Now moving to your single, or excuse me, your album with the
yeah,
single, but
yeah,
recently released Gars Bian
yeah,
and also the single within Deja Vu. I got a
yeah.
chance to listen to that. I got to go back and listen through the complete album, but
Hmm.
few songs I listened to, especially the Deja Vu, kind of had that. It almost had like a cinematic feel to the
Yeah,
instrumental. Yeah.
yeah.
What was your inspiration behind the album?
Uh, it's funny, but I would say that it's I've changed, I've switched cities 2 years ago. I moved out from basically, let's say, the French Alps by the Swiss border to the south of France to Marseille, like typical Mediterranean city, very vibrant, very alternative, very chaotic in a good way. And that city has just given me so much inspiration because I've had so many, like in 2 years of time spent there, I had, I don't know, like 10 years of experiences, like if I compare it to the other cities I've been in. So it's really yeah, a thankful note, to that city, because when I arrived there, I was burned out. I was very tired. I was very unsatisfied with how, I was doing music, and just that city with its lack of perfection, but its joyous chaos just like freed me up. So it's the main inspiration, and all the themes of that the album are somewhat related to the city. People I've met there, experiences I've had there. You have many references to the just the setting. It's a beautiful area, just a lot of cliffs, white rocks, like pine trees all around. It's very cinematic. But it's funny because the single in itself is not very representative of that because it was written well before. There's actually another version of Déjà Vu that's out on my first EP. It's just that I wanted to do like a more stripped down version that let just the instrumentals shine. You don't have any drums, in that song. It's
Yeah.
very rare for me. Normally, I love hip hop infused drums, something that's very energetic. But in that one, it's you have like a bass inspired, like a double bass inspired sound that has like some percussive aspects. But I wanted it to be vocal driven and powerful, but I wanted to avoid the gimmick that I sometimes overuse, like the calm, and you think it's over, and then boom, big drop, and everything explodes. I wanted it to be a little more, yet have more space, and to let as you said, like that contemplative, cinematic fitting shine a bit more. So yeah, it was cool to rewrite that song with a very different vibe compared to the original version.
And on that one as well, did you like produce all of the tracks on the project?
Well, yeah, I would say m- most of them are totally self-produced. It's just that, for instance, if you take Love Yourself and a French one, a French song that is called Seños, these two songs, I've produced them with a very good friend of mine he's called Mikhail. That's his stage name. And there's like an alchemy between us. Like everything that's, very efficient and funky, I've produced that with him because he was playing in my band, my previous band, like 6 or 7 years ago, and we've just stayed very good friend. And it's funny because there is absolutely no set procedure for we are not like one of these iconic duos in which like someone would do that role or that role. Sometimes he would just like bring the most amazing finished instrumental, and I would just have to modify the sound design and do all the vocals. But sometimes I would bring that to him. He would had like guitar and modifies the structure, and it's like a very natural back and forth exchange with him. And so, yeah, apart from him, I don't have any collaborators yet because I like experimenting and the relationship works so well with him that for the moment I'm not working with anyone else apart from mixing and mastering. But I'm very open. It's just because I didn't have a choice. You know, it was like COVID first, and then I arrived to a new city, so I didn't have much people to rely on or to collaborate with. But who knows? I'm very open, and I like collaborating in music, so we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, like one of the things I like about, just having this conversation about music production and creating is how you implement live instrumentation in a lot of your production as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah,
And for me, I always say that live instrumentation and also learning like how to play an instrument just as is can help just add a more live feel to your
of course.
projects other
Mm-hmm.
than just producing in a box. And that's okay. I mean, you create how you create, but I always encourage artists to at least learn one instrument that he can possibly use in some of your music. How important was that to you?
Crucial, crucial. You've put like the yeah. You just addressed something that was very important to me because you have many iconic, I think, formations like bands or just like records have been made with limitations because you might not have all the money in the world for, like miking up a drum set if you're an indie artist, for instance,
Yeah.
or you might not have, the space or the time. You just deal with constraints all the time when you're an artist and you're just trying to make the best out of the setup that you have. And for me, my big limitation is that I live in a very crowded European city center. So recording drums, acoustic drums is not something that I can do. So as you can hear in my productions, you have a lot of drum samples. So I was like, okay, it's gonna be influenced, like it's gonna sound a little bit electronic because you have all these drum samples. But first, I'm gonna spend a lot of time, just like tweaking them like real drums with the velocity, with different nuances, with different, um, variations, so it sounds more organic. And then purposefully to counterbalance, that very clean E drum sound. I'm gonna purposefully leave like little, not mistakes, but just stuff that's living. I'm not gonna perfectly tune all my back vocals. I could do it. I know how to sing, but sometimes just it's gonna add a little bit of vibe. And just for the instruments, as you said, like I'm gonna change the feeling for each song. Sometimes it's gonna rush a little bit. It's gonna drag. It's just you want to have that kind of stuff. It really depends on what you want to do, but um, I've really been influenced by the French touch, sound design wise, all these amazing artists, Daft Punk, Justice, all these guys, DJ Mehdi, all these wonderful musicians and DJs. And they had that very natural approach, even to sampling. They would pick stuff that was raw, that wasn't perfect, and we just like shape it, and it would work. But if you take a look, at stuff like theoretically, you'd be like, it's not on the grid or it's not that, but it works. And for me, that's a key aspect, as you mentioned it perfectly. Just pick real instruments, shape a groove, and try to give it as much life as possible to just counterbalance, the modernity of, the synth, the drum programming that you have on the other end.
Yeah, I have this friend also that I make music with sometimes, and he's a acoustic guitar player, and he also plays
Mm-hmm.
the bass. And in the past, I've worked with him on some of my like previous projects that I've released, and there may be times even where I'll create a basic melody, maybe even with the drums, but I'm just sitting there listening, and then I start thinking like, okay, well, it's missing something. So I'll send it to him. I'll send the instrumental to him, and he just finds something to add to it, whether it's a bass line, whether it's something on top of the melody, and it's just kind of like it's almost kind of like he can tell what I'm thinking or what direction I want to
Mm-hmm.
go with something. And it's always good, even like myself, I may do all the brass related melodies and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, but just having somebody else to kind of have that extra ear and bring out those other ideas, I think is also good to have.
Yeah. I think, as you said, like alchemy is key between two musicians, and especially for brass, you can had so much life. It's so lively, all the articulations. I'm a huge fan of Stevie Wonder as well, and they're just you have the melody, but you have like a beautiful counter melody, that's answering, interplaying, it's just crazy what you can do with brass. So yeah, I guess it has become like second nature for you.
Learn those instruments. Gotta learn those instruments. I want to learn
Yeah.
how to play the keys more fluently.
Uh-huh.
I know simple chords, but I can't really play the piano as,
Hmm.
well as I think I could be able to. So that's next on the list for me, soon. We'll see. We'll see. We are in, well, pretty much almost ending March, the month of March.
Yeah.
And I mean, I still think we're pretty early in 2025, but like, do you have any other plans? Like, I noticed, you mentioned how the city has brought you a lot of inspiration, and I noticed that you do a lot of events around the city,
Hmm.
performances, things like that. Do you have anything planned for, the remainder of the year that's coming
Hmm.
up?
Yeah. As once again, just right on. You anticipated very well that I want to be connected with the city a bit more, even event-wise. I would say that for the rest of 2025, well, what we did with 2024 was that we organized a lot of concerts for emerging artists because you know that it's a very hip-hop oriented city, Marseille, and you don't have that many indie pop or alternative pop acts there. So we basically had a problem last year that we solved, and I'm really happy about that. We solved it. It was like people, like bookers and venue owners were like, your music is very nice, but will we have people to just fill in the venue? And so we're just like, don't worry, we're gonna pay for the venue, we're gonna take all the risk, and we're gonna show you that we can fill that, fill the room and have people come in. And that happened, was very stressful and very difficult, but we organized a lot of events, and that culminated last week with the release party of my album, in which we had a lot of people in a packed, nice venue of Marseille, and it's something that I want to keep doing. So I'm getting closer, to just venue owners and people in the city and other bands from the same scene, so we can create, movement of different indie pop acts. So that would be great. And then I think it's paradoxical because I've just released the album, but I'm gonna go in studio once again because I want to change my strategy. I want to just release, singles and spend a little more time on each song so people get the blend of the universe, the musical universe that I have, because it's, you have French, you have English, you have calm stuff, you have funky stuff. So I just want to release stuff regularly so people get used to it, because I have very good feedback on that stuff, but always people are surprised, like, oh, I didn't expect that. That's different, that you switch from one language to the other. Just spending more time doing that, and spontaneous gig in the city as well. And yeah, I think it's gonna be a packed year. So I'm not planning as much as I did for the previous years, because a lot has happened in the course of the three first few months of 2025. So I know that stuff's gonna keep coming. So I'm not planning as much as I used to do.
Yeah, that's one of the things I mean, you mentioned like about how you're going back and forth between like English and
Yeah,
French, and
yeah,
me personally, like I grew up actually in Lafayette, Louisiana, and
yeah.
that's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of French culture. Now I
Mm-hmm.
can I can read French and understand it from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I heard a conversation, I could probably pick little
Yeah,
words
pick
out that
up.
I
Yeah, yeah,
understand. So I say that to say that's a real talent, being able to use both. Because I even heard one of your songs like that where you went back and forth between
yeah.
French and English, and I just think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
pretty cool as well that you do that. Is that something that just comes naturally, or like do you go into songs that maybe thinking like, okay, I want to do certain parts in English, I want to do certain parts in French.
Mm-hmm.
How do you kind of create between the two?
It's a very interesting question because I think it's very different to write in French and in English. You don't have the same sounds, you don't have the same rhythm. You know, like English, for instance, we're talking right now, it's bouncing. You have so many, how to say that, like accents, just like a drum set, you know, whereas French can be super flat. You know, you can have a one sentence that can drag on without not that many, changes. So it wasn't natural at all. I just know that when I was starting out, I was like what, like 12, and I wanted to sing in English. And even though I gave up on having a perfect English accent. I have a French accent and I own it. It's fine. But back then, I wanted to have perfect English, and I was very frustrated because all my songs had that very thick French accent. I was like, no, not how I want to do it. And then when it improved and when it started to get acceptable, like when it met the quality threshold, let's say, I got into another problem. Is like I was based in France, and people wanted to hear songs in French because, of course, they hear songs in English. But when you want to be promoted by local venues, they were like, "Hey, you don't have any French in your repertoire. It's going to be difficult, even if you want to make people sing your songs in the." So I was like, okay, I'm gonna relearn everything, and it was funny because I started introducing French into my repertoire, and at first it was only ballad because like French is perfect for ballad, it's
Yeah, yeah.
romantic, it flows. But then I was like, I don't want to have only I love all the funky stuff. I've been very influenced by all the Motown,
Okay.
artists, by US music, by funky stuff from the UK, just like Jamiroquai. My main influences are not French. I've learned like I to love my own culture after, but I love funk. I love R&B. I love soul, neo soul, all that kind of stuff. And so it's like let's give myself a little challenge. Let's make French a little funkier. Let's go in uncharted
Yeah, yeah.
territories. Let's go back and forth. And for the romantic part, instead of going to French, no, I'll go to English, and just like trying to be where I'm not supposed to be. And to be honest, there was a big unlock moment is when I was introduced to the Quebec, like French Canada scene, because they switch when they talk. It's a blend of French and English. They switch when you go to Montreal or to Quebec. They just switch in their music. When I just discovered that, was like, whoa, that's crazy. They just do what I want to do. They just switch between French and English. So I started experimenting, and now I know it's part of my process.
Yeah, I have some friends here that I've even done songs with that they they go between Spanish and
Yeah,
English in songs. In
of
fact, we
course.
we recorded songs, and I think it's kind of like having a Swiss Army knife, and
Yeah.
being able to being where I am as well, like cater to two different audiences. Like you mentioned, you had French venues talk
Hmm.
to you about, French audience at
Yeah.
your performances. So I just think it's also a very cool talent to have to be able to make music in two different languages.
Yeah.
Um, Now, like, where can our listeners follow you at online and, find all of your music?
Well, I would say that for the music, whether you prefer subscription-based models, like Apple Music or Deezer, or just Tidal, Amazon. I'm everywhere. And then for people who are more into Bandcamp, SoundCloud, I'm also there. So I think I can be found pretty easily. And
Yeah.
yeah, then pretty classic stuff. Instagram is very important. And I tend to communicate with both languages because same, I have to alternate on socials with French and between French and English. But yeah, classic. I don't have I can be found anywhere people want to find me.
And go ahead and give our audience as well, like your social media platforms.
Yeah, it's Naud music FR. It's no music FR. It's the same tag for all platforms. So you'll find me, and yeah, you'll see it's gonna be fun. Even if you're not familiar at all, with, French music or stuff like that, I think it can be an interesting, you know, account to follow for you, all the listeners, because you'll have stuff that you'll know, because as I said, I'm heavily influenced by music from the US and from the UK, but you might see, curious stuff that you can brag about if you have hipster friends. Oh, I know that hybrid, artist from from France. He does that. It's very exotic.
Yeah, go. Yeah, I like what I heard from you so far with Deja Vu, and
Yeah.
I gotta definitely look into more of your catalog. Do you have any music videos out there as well?
Yes, I released another one. It's actually on the album. It's called Easier on Stage. It was released. The video clip was released in January, so it's very fresh. And yeah, it's a good, once again, a good synthesis. A good summary of the project. You have funky stuff. You have French. You have English, mostly English for that one. And yeah, and I'll have another one that's going to be released, another video clip at the end of the year. So I'm gonna keep pushing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Go hit Nod with a follow on all
Yeah,
socials. I just actually followed you right before
I saw that.
the
Follow back.
yeah, thank you, thank you. And yeah, definitely enjoyed the conversation that we had today,
Hmm.
and looking forward to what comes next with you musically, your performances, videos,
Hmm.
anything.
Cool. Thanks a lot for having me. And it was just great. It was my first interview in English, so I'm honored that it was with you, just to be able to spread and share the love from the other side of the planet.
Oh yeah, definitely. Anybody like that joins me, but especially from, internationally, because like, what time is it there, by the way?
It's roughly 7:30, like 7 p.m.
7 p.m. Okay, all right, yeah,
Yeah.
because it's about a what
Like what? Like one, one,
five,
one. Ah, it's five
almost
already.
5.5 hour
Yeah.
difference
Yeah.
from where we're recording. And I've done shows with like I said, people from France. I've done shows with people from Australia, the UK,
Yeah.
and just the time differences. We find a way to make it work, and it's always really
Beautiful.
cool to see what what's going on internationally in terms of music, how
Mm-hmm.
other music creators create, how they work in their communities, and just learning something new about another culture as well. So I definitely
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you hanging around and spending the time with us.
Thanks a lot, Dita.
No problem at all. You can follow me on Instagram at
Mm-hmm.
d._major music. Same thing on TikTok and Threads, as well as Twitter and X at d.mnb. And if you hung around this far to watch or listen to the interview, please consider subscribing to YouTube as well as all podcast streaming platforms. I like to upload new interviews each and every Friday with new music creators. So stay tuned. It's been another episode of the Major Music Lounge with D Dot and Nod, and we're out.